What's up, everybody? Welcome back. I've been off on a hiatus for the last 12 days, floating down a river with no social media or cell phone. So we've been missing some interviews, but we're back at it today, uncovering some of the social media strategies that the top UFC, MMA athletes and promotions are using today to help build strong social presences. In this interview today, I sat down with Randy Faehnrich, the mastermind of content at 3.0 Labs, currently having worked with some of the top promotions in the world like Thrill One, sports and entertainment, as well as the UFC. We talk about his days from the UFC to building his own powerhouse agency, and he shares his journey and insight into combat sports content. Make sure you watch his new podcast, Verse Us, with Eric Nicksick. You can find that on all channels now. And if you're enjoying my content, make sure you give it a like, give me a subscribe, drop me a comment. I always love hearing feedback from the fans. And now, let's get it. Welcome back to Fight Capital, where we enter the ring of combat sports business. I'm your host, Ryan Rappaport. Today, I'm excited to introduce Randy Faehnrich, the head of content at 3.0 Labs and the co-host of the Verse Us podcast with Coach Eric Nicksick. Randy has led social media strategy with companies like UFC and Thrill One before founding his own agency, which was acquired by 3.0 Labs. He brings a wealth of experience where he's been instrumental in growing the digital presence of some of the biggest names in MMA, including Francis Ngannou. And currently, as the head of content at 3.0 Labs, Randy continues to innovate at the intersection of sports, entertainment, and digital media. Today, we're going to talk about some of his journey, insights, and in the future of combat sports in the digital age. Thanks for joining me today, Randy. How are you and where are you joining from?
I'm good, man. Thank you for that intro. That was really cool. I'm joining you from Las Vegas, which is where I live.
Yeah, I've been seeing all the content you guys have been doing with Verse Us. Love all of the content you're putting out with Coach Eric Nicksick. I'm just curious, where does this whole passion for combat sports come from for you?
Yeah, that's a good question. To be quite honest, I never really had a crazy passion for combat sports. Like in terms, like, using that word passion, right? I never really had that. I was always a big boxing fan. Would watch boxing growing up. Remember Holyfield and Lewis and Mayweather, De La Hoya, and kind of that was like my era of boxing, late 90s and then all of the 2000s. And so I was always a big boxing fan. And I remember when I moved to Vegas in 2010 is when I really started to get into UFC a little bit more, and specifically UFC, not just MMA. I was only really watching UFC at the time. And so, yeah, I kind of just always was curious about it. Living in Vegas, at that time, we had no professional sports teams. There was no Golden Knights or the Las Vegas Aces. The Raiders weren't here. So UFC was the de facto hometown team, if you will. And so that's kind of what piqued my interest in combat even more. And then funny enough, connecting with Eric, I was his intern actually way back in 2013 or 14. And that kind of just grew my interest even more being around him and other coaches in the gym at Extreme Couture. So that's kind of the genesis of where it started.
You had a great career at places like the UFC, Thrill One Sports as well. What motivated you to that transition of working for companies like that and starting your own social media agency?
Yeah, I mean, well, starting my own company was never really the goal. That was something I never really thought about doing, or being a entrepreneur, a solopreneur, whatever you want to call it. But after UFC, I was approached by Francis Ngannou to potentially work with him and help him kind of build his digital footprint, social footprint. Talked to him a little bit. Was like, yeah, we could absolutely do this. And then from Francis is when I started talking to the people over at Thrill One. And underneath the Thrill One umbrella was Nitro Circus, SLS, which is their skateboarding league. And then they were just about to launch Nitro Rallycross, which I believe now is called Nitro Cross. And so after talking with someone like Francis on the athlete and individual side, and then talking to someone like Thrill One, who was looking for more of like that consulting direction of how to go through social and digital, it kind of made sense in my mind to go ahead and begin my own content agency, social media agency, and see how far I could take it. And it was the right move at that time. Even though I think I actually my launch date for my business was like March 16th, and I think the world shut down on March 20th, 4 days later, in 2020. That ended up working out in my favor because I was doing social and digital, and everything was online and virtual. But yeah, not the greatest time to start a company, you know.
Yeah, man, that resonates with me. Sometimes you just got to go and hop on that bull if it's riding past you because you never know where it's going to take you. And here you are today,
Just got
right?
to do it. You'd rather say I tried it and failed than say I didn't try at all. You know what I mean?
Well, talk to me a little bit about those experiences. I mean, with working with companies like the UFC and everything you did with Francis, how does that shape your approach to the digital content and social media management that you're doing with 3.0 Labs, Faye?
Yeah. Well, I'd say the biggest influence was obviously working with UFC. Being there and being a part of that team and helping grow, those channels, kind of really, pitted in my mind or embedded in my mind that a social first company, a digital first company, is the way things will be moving forward. Now, this was back in, I think I joined UFC in 2015 or 2014. I can't actually remember exactly. I think it was 2015. Um, and they were ahead of the curve in that regard. They were very, very much so social first, digital first. Everything we're going to do is going to run through these channels, and that's going to broaden our wider business everywhere else. And so I think working there kind of put that in my mind. And once leaving there and getting approached by athletes or other brands that kind of didn't have that direction, that kind of shaped how I approach people I work with. It's like, hey, everything has to go through these channels to get to the broader part of your business, right? If your business is a house, social media is the front door. It's the first thing people see when they walk up. They don't see the windows, they don't see the couch inside, they don't see the kitchen, all this other stuff. They see the front door. So that's kind of, UFC definitely helped mold my brain in that way and helped shape how I look at social channels.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I have a friend who's heading up Power Slap's social media strategy right now and doing a lot of stuff over there. A kid named Aiden Morgan, and we were talking about that. And one of the big things that it's the eyeballs, right? The
Yeah,
eyeballs, the quality of the content, and you just see everything Power Slap's been able to do in a short period of time. I think you hit the nail on the head. And being a social first strategy is the way to work these days.
100%. It's just the way to go. I'm sure we'll get into it, but there's some stuff we're working on at 3.0. And a lot of these pitches begin with, well, what's your social look like? What's your digital look like? How are you guys, driving revenue and leads and new eyeballs through social? So, yeah, that's the way to go.
Well, talk to me about some of the challenges you hit while you were helping Francis grow his brand and how you overcame them.
Honestly, Francis was pretty easy to work with. He understood the importance of like content and social from an early stage. Even when because I worked with Francis from his debut till now, pretty much. His debut, I was at the UFC at that time, but I mean, I was at UFC working with him for his debut, the first Stipe fight, Anthony Hamilton fight, all these guys that he fought. So him and I always talked, and he always understood the importance of like having that channel be a tool to grow your brand. I don't think he maybe knew at the time how powerful it could be, but he knew it was powerful, right? And so I think that's why he kind of approached me. Challenges wise, I mean, you know, what you see is what you get with Francis. He's a very quiet, reserved guy, and trying to get a giant, dude like that from the places that he's from to make a TikTok is not the easiest thing in the world, right? Or say like, hey, there's value in you doing, this piece of content and this transition or this whatever, and he looks at you and he's like, what the fuck is that? Like, what's this going to do for me? So but it's just those are just conversations you have to have. It's not just Francis. Other athletes that are maybe a little bit older in their 30s or brands that are more like legacy brands that don't get it. So there's always challenges, but for the most part, a guy like Francis was pretty easy to convince of how important this is.
Yeah, it's a conversation I'm constantly having with athletes, young professionals, and it's really the content you put out is how people experience you. Not everyone's going to be able to meet you in person, but they definitely feel like they're getting that experience of knowing you and being a part of your circle. It's one of the reasons I do what I do. I'm just curious, what role have you seen social media play in the career development of these athletes and in combat sports athletes today?
I mean, if we're just talking combat sports, like there's a number of examples. I guess the biggest one would be, someone like Patty Pimlet or Sean O'Malley or any of these guys that can leverage social and use their voice and their creativity and their brand on social to leverage, you know, bigger fights. Like I'm not saying Sean or Patty, these guys aren't talented. Sean's obviously the champion right now. You were seeing him in bigger spots and bigger moments because he knew how to leverage his brand online. He was on pay-per-views, well before most people get onto pay-per-views. He was the ESPN prelim headliner, which is a very, very coveted spot leading into a pay-per-view on some big cards. Patty's the same way. He does the same thing. He understands how to leverage that. And there's plenty of other guys, but those two just come to mind off the top of my head. But it's important for all athletes, and you see a lot of guys, at least I do, try to go the Conor McGregor route in terms of being the loudmouth and being the braggadocious type, where whereas you don't necessarily have to do that. Maybe you could sprinkle a little bit of that in there, but you control, like you said earlier, what people see online. You control how you look online. And if you're not leveraging that, it's a big miss. And you don't need a million followers to leverage social media. You just need a strong, solid community. And that's it. And so it's super important for these guys and girls who are trying to come up to gain any sort of leverage against a company like UFC or NBA or NFL or whatever to say, hey, I have a brand and a presence here. Like, let's figure out something that makes sense for both of us.
I mean, I agree 100%. I've been seeing like what Hanato Makano, Gilbert
Yeah,
Burns,
great
and
example.
those guys are crushing
Moicano's,
it.
Moicano's a great example. A great example. Didn't even know if the guy could really speak English up until like 3 or 4 fights ago. And then all of a sudden gets on the mic and then starts his YouTube and starts on Instagram and Twitter. And perfect example. Perfect example.
Yeah, I mean, and you guys have a lot of really cool projects coming along. I mean, especially with the things that you have going with the Lennox Lewis competition series. Love to hear more about that. But how do you see the integration of sports and entertainment evolving? Because it's definitely ratcheted up a notch, especially this year, I feel like.
Yeah, I mean, that is what sport is at the highest level. It's entertainment. I mean, that's something that Shanda, who hired me at UFC, shout out to her, an OG in the social space, like was really honestly way ahead of her time with like the way she thought about social. But I remember her telling us, and any athlete that would listen, like this is a sport at the highest level, but you are an entertainer just as much as you are an athlete. And that's why I think guys like Connor or girls like Ronda were so successful so early because they understood that how to play the role of the heel, play the role of the hero, use the crowd to your advantage, things like that. It's only going to heighten and increase more. Any professional athlete at the highest level is an entertainer as much as they are an athlete. That's why you see NFL guys celebrate in the end zone, or you see dudes celebrate after a dunk or crosses someone over, or athletes celebrate after a knockout. Izzy with the arrows and all that stuff, like, and Pajeda when he walks to the ring with the like that. It's entertainment as much as it is sport, and the sooner athletes realize that, the better they'll be.
Hey, everyone. Quick favor to ask. Did you know that nearly 80% of the people tuning in right now aren't subscribed yet? That subscribe button down below is what powers me every week to keep putting out these podcasts. Big shout out and thank you to everyone that's been supporting me for this. I couldn't do it without you. If you're enjoying the content, please subscribe below. It means the world to me. And for everyone supporting me, thank you so much. Now, back to the show. Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Patty before. I had my cousin texted me a photo of some energy drink he just bought because Patty's endorsed by it or is a co-owner of it. I mean, I've been to the last two of Sean O'Malley's fights, and all that stuff is stuff that they've cultivated online and their social presence, which I probably would have never have even thought or known of them before and just seen their fights. I mean, you know how many fighters come and go and kind of fade into obscurity. But just with all these athletes, obviously it's become very important for them to have this strong digital presence. But what advice would you give to them from what you've seen and what you've built and to help them get to that next level of their kind of content creation aspects of their career?
I mean, the advice is pretty simple. It's just to start doing it. Like, I think a lot of guys and girls are maybe a little like hesitant or timid to just put content out there for whatever reason. But the thing is, you just got to start doing it and diversify it a little bit. Like, yeah, it's cool that you're a high level athlete and you could crack pads and you do all this like MMA training, but show the other side of you. If you're a woman fighter, show the sexy side of you, or show the other hobbies that you have. And if you're a male fighter, show the softer side of you. Show something that's outside of fighting. Like who's the kid that they're really pushing right now? He's like a young kid.
Raul Rosas. I know it's
No, no,
one.
no, no. He has like a tattoo on the middle of his sternum. Like, damn, what's his name? He just fought. He knocked dude out in like 12 seconds at
Oh,
the paper.
Peyton Talbot. Yeah, I've had him on.
Albert,
Yeah.
yeah. Shows off like some of the merch that him and his team designs. He shows off him skateboarding and like doing that. People clamor to see that stuff. They want to get inside looks at who you are, not just as a fighter, but who you are as a person. And so, I would say just start creating content, whatever that may be. If it's you hitting pads for 30 seconds, that's fine. Put it out. Start creating content, develop a cadence that you think will work for you and your platform twice a week, 4 times a week, every day, whatever it is, and just start doing it. Because I promise you'll regret not doing it 6 months from now than if you were to start today and then look back 6 months at what you've created. Um, just do it. Yeah.
Man, you nailed it. And actually, it's funny you mentioned that because that was a conversation that Peyton Talbot and I had back in January, not too long before his YouTube channel came out. And he was already scheming on it. And he goes, wait till you see this.
Yeah.
And man, is it weird. Yeah, like it is weird, but it's interesting. It's different. And when I saw this content and I watch all the stuff that comes out, I don't get 100% of it. I'm 39. I'm like, am I too old for this now? I mean, it's like but when I'm seeing what he's putting out, that is how I know that on top of him delivering in the ring, which is arguably the most important part, but the cool things he's putting out and the behind the scenes, like the pole dancing thing, the fact that he like gets up and like can actually pole dance. It's like as weird or whatever your opinion of that is, like it's interesting and it's got people's eyes. And in the end, that's what brand partners are looking for. That's what the UFC is looking for. That's what the actual fans are looking for, ways to connect and vibe, either for better or for worse, for what you're putting out there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I didn't know about the pole dancing stuff, but yeah, anything that you're putting out there, that you're letting people look into and see a different side of your life, is a win. It's a win. So yeah, good on him for doing that. And anyone else who's beginning to do that. There's a lot of fighters I see now coming up that understand the importance of content and the value of it.
One of the things I love about what you guys are doing at 3.0 Labs, it's not just fight content. I know that Markel and Andy, they all have some really cool projects that you guys are working on. Can you just talk to me about some of the future projects that you're excited about at 3.0 and then how they're going to impact not just the combat sports community, but the whole entertainment scene?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, to be honest, like we're kind of out of the fight game, if you will, in a way. Obviously, we have the show. We have the show with Eric, which is we love and will do for a long, long time. But our focus has kind of shifted to what's outside of the fight game. Andrew, who you mentioned, is the co-founder of 3.0 Labs. He has a background in kind of TV and film, and so he is constantly out there looking for like production clients, let's say. So people that have their own production companies and maybe have a focus in the African film industry or the Latino film industry or the Saudi or the Middle Eastern film industry. So there's a lot of things we're working on in that regard. Carlo, who is another member of the team, and is on kind of our partnership side, he's a really big combat fan. and has went out and signed Desiree Wadaker, the Muay Thai princess. I don't know if you're familiar with her,
Mm-hmm,
but
mm-hmm.
she's under 3.0 now. So we still have our foot in that space a little bit. But he's also very, very tapped into the music scene, the Latino music scene. So there's going to be some things that 3.0 does that are going to be in the music scene. Maybe primarily the Latin music space for right now, but it's going to be things that are pretty cool. And then we have a very eclectic palette. We work with like a toy maker company. We have NIL athletes that we're working with, and one of them's going to USC next fall. One of them's going to Arizona State next fall. And then we're constantly looking for more things to do in that realm, whether it's basketball, volleyball, soccer, whatever the case may be. So there's a lot of stuff going on at 3.0, a lot of good things, a lot of big projects, not too many things that I can like talk about and say for sure this is coming, but a lot of irons in the fire and a lot of big name brands that a lot of people would recognize that we're going to be potentially working with in the near future. So it's very good right now to be at 3.0. It's full steam ahead for a company that started 18 months ago. It's not bad, you know.
I've been watching everything boil to the surface, and every time you guys have a big announcement like the Lennox Lewis stuff, the forget the name of the toys, the figurine company, I mean the
Playmakers, yeah.
Kelly, all of that, all of these partnerships that the team has been putting together, I really see the eye for it. And even though it's a broad vision, it's being constructed, and it's been very cool to kind of follow and continue to see. And now everything you're doing with Eric and putting out this content, man, I think you're doing a huge favor, not just for the combat sports community, but for the sports community as a whole, because everything that he's doing there and the team at Extreme Couture has been really fascinating. I mean, just the level of athletes coming out of there, the culture out of there, and the content, I think, is game changing, man. So really excited to see what you guys have next, and I'm really excited to hear the next great project and see the next great podcast you put out.
Yeah, we're really excited on the podcast space, man. Eric has just been, like I said, incredible. He's a guy that he just has that it factor. Like he's a coach, but he's a leader. And when you listen to him talk, you can't help but get inspired or feel some sort of something, right? To maybe light that fire inside of you. And so, the show's been incredible. We have some good guests that we're kind of waiting and trying to get here in the next couple of weeks that I think a lot of people would like. And then obviously there's a stable of people at XC that I'm sure people would like to hear from: Sean Strickland, Francis Ngannou, Casey O'Neill, Misha Tate, bunch of people. So it's all good stuff right now with the podcast, and we're just starting. Our fifth episode drops tomorrow at the time of recording this, so Tuesday, July 23rd. But we've really only had the show page up for 2.5 weeks. Because we dropped those two quick episodes because Dan took a fight on 4 minutes notice.
Yeah.
We had him on the show, but yeah, it's all steam ahead, full steam ahead, and I hope people really like what we have to offer.
No, I'm excited, and just that first episode with Dan, I'll just kudos to you guys for getting that out there so quick. Not only was it the timeliness of it, but as a way to kick off as a behind the scenes look. I mean, it's part of the reason I do what I do is that a lot what the feedback I get is that people might see the fights, but they know next to little to nothing about what happens behind the scenes. And for you guys to pull back the curtain like that for whatever that storm that led to Dan fighting, and performing well, and the
Yeah.
after effect, and having Kai Kamaka Sadabu, fighting the day before, him
Mhm.
getting there, thinking he's gonna have a rest day, instead he's rolling out there with Roman and all that. I mean, that was just all super fascinating. And as someone who's a fan of the sport and the business behind it, that was gold for me. So I'm really excited to see you guys keep putting out content like that.
Yeah, it's gonna be good, man. That's one of the things about the fight game that is, you know, special. There's so many events every year, right? I mean, UFC just by itself has what, 40 to 42 events a year in a 52-week calendar year, not including Contender Series, not including the Ultimate Fighter. Then we have guys from PFL, which have events throughout the year. PFL and Bellator now merge. Then there's the boxing space, and a lot of our, we have a pretty big network in the fight game, so we know a lot of boxers and boxing coaches. So there's no shortage on content. But to your point, it is about being timely, making sure we have the right guests at the right time. We're talking about the right things. But it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun, and like I said, I'm excited to see. I'm excited for fans to see what we have coming up, and I hope they like what we have to offer. I think they will.
Nice, man. Well, just locked in some studio space for myself. Everything's been remote for me for the most part, all except for I think 3 or 4 in-person episodes that I've done of the
Yeah,
140 some odd that I've recorded. So definitely we'll have to do a podcast studio next time you guys are dropping some big news and get that
yeah,
out there as well. Because I love everything you guys are doing and can't wait to see what you do next.
absolutely. I really appreciate you, man. Thank you so much. And yeah, keep watching. Keep talking about it. Hopefully, you guys let us know, who you want to see on the show. Let us know what you like, what you don't like, and we're just going to keep turning them out. So it's gonna be a good run for Versus and a good run for 3.0.
Yeah, well, before we get going, let everyone know where they can find the podcast and find you on social media.
Yeah, so the show is called Verse Us with Eric Nicksick on YouTube. You can also get the show on Spotify, Apple Music, Google Play, iHeartRadio, all the places you get your audio downloads. And then follow the show at VSUS Pod on social media, on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, Twitter, all of it. And then for me, I'm simple at Randall Anthony, Randall with 2 L's, at Randall Anthony _ on all social media as well.
Awesome, man. Hey, well, looking forward to seeing the next episodes. I demolished that Brad Tavares episode as like my first content that I absorbed back after being off digitally for 10 days was that episode, and loved hearing his story, man. And so everyone, if you're watching this, follow their podcast. You're not going to be disappointed, and they're putting out amazing content, short form and long form. So definitely start following them on all channels, and looking forward to talking to you again soon, Randy.
All right. I appreciate it, Ryan. Thank you so much.
Thank you.